Betrayal is one of the biggest soul wounds we can experience. When we think about betrayal, really it is an intentional kind of act. And we have to think about it in terms of, what kind of impact does it have on us? How do we internalize the impact of betrayal? And so, whether it is someone cheated on you, someone stabbed you in the back, someone lied to your face, someone didn't have your back, someone did something that they knew would hurt you, but they did it anyway. There's so many forms of betrayal that are out there, and those are the most difficult ones to heal from. Why is that? So, two things is that when we are in relation with someone, when we are connected with someone energetically, what happens if someone hurts us is that we literally feel it on the energetic level. We feel it on the soul level. We don't just feel it if we are hurt in a physical way. We don't feel it just in our physical bodies. We don't just feel it in an emotional way. We feel it in the energetic nature of who we are. If we are emotionally hurt, even if we're not physically hurt, we can feel that again emotionally, and it goes all the way down to the soul level. If someone has lied to us, if someone has betrayed us in that way, if someone has, again, stabbed us in the back in one way or another, or thrown us under the bus, or done something that they willfully created as a wound, then it is hard to get by. Going back to the energetic nature, when we have a relationship with someone else, whether it's a close one or you're just getting to know them, or maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a boss or a coworker or a sibling, when someone hurts us, that energetic nature, that energetic relationship we have, the energy that we share within that dynamic with that person is severed or broken or chipped. It is fragmented. We have a much, much harder time when we know that the person was intentional about it. We know that there was something that they were willfully doing. And if it's something that, they said something stupid and they didn't realize what they said, that is totally different. We can still be hurt by that, but it doesn't penetrate in the same way that betrayal does. It's all about the energetic nature of what we have with that person. So consider a spouse, consider someone that you've dated a long time, you get married, you're with them, and then something starts to happen that they are betraying you. Maybe you find out that they're lying to you, if you find out that they're cheating on you, you find out that they're hiding something from you in some way. You know that it is a willful act. You know that there is something that that soul, that energetic person is doing that is basically going to damage the relationship one way or another. And that, again, going back to the energetic nature of the soul, we share energy with people all the time. When we are in love with someone, the whole thing that's happening is that we have this energetic exchange. We have a constant energetic exchange. When they start to chip away at that, if they hurt us in one way or another, it starts to break that bond. It starts to break down that pureness of the energetic nature that we have with that other soul, to the point that sometimes we have a hard time forgiving. Now, this is, as a psychologist, this is one of those things that, again, betrayal comes into my office almost every day, if not every day. I've been doing this work for almost 40 years. And so almost every day, someone feels like they have been betrayed by one person or another. And so, from a psychological perspective, we have to explore, obviously, what that person was experiencing, how they experienced it, what the details of the event are. You have to break down the betrayal from the human side. But because I do soul healing work too, most often I am able to help clients understand that this is not just a psychological kind of event. This is not just a physical event. These are soul events. These are soul impactful events, soul damaging events. So if you think about the betrayals you've had in your own life, and think about, gosh, how is it? Well, why am I still holding on to this? What is it that hasn't been healed? You can go through years worth of therapy and still not get down to that core wound until you do the soul healing work. And I'm going to give you an example of this. I had a client come to me, fairly new client. She was a medical professional. She had a situation during her residency that, I taught family practice residents, so I understand what these people go through. I understand what the training's like. I understand, and I work with a lot of medical professionals, so I know what their residencies are like. I know what their medical training's like. She had one of her senior attending physicians that targeted her for some things, not sexually, but just did not want to let her get through. And so it was very damaging, but he was undermining her left and right. And, a lot of people wouldn't even believe that this stuff was happening, but they found out that it was actually happening. And she ended up having to leave that residency because she was damaged to the point where she was not. The situation was damaged to the point where she could not finish her residency there. Then, she goes to this other residency and it's a wonderful experience. She has healthy people and she gets through it with flying colors. Later, she comes to me as a working professional. This was years after this had all happened. And she said to me, probably the third or fourth session, she said, I don't understand. I've been through years of therapy about this and I can't get to the bottom of it. I can't understand why this is still bothering me. And I helped her understand that it was willful harm. I helped her understand that it was someone that she had a working relationship with that should have been having her back, should have been watching after her, should have really helped her through her educational track. But for whatever reason, he targeted her. And as I'm talking to her, and I said to her, this isn't just an emotional wound, this is a soul wound. And I paused for a minute, not knowing if she would be able to receive the language. And she sat back and she said, wow, that is the first thing that makes sense. Now I understand that we need to go to a deeper level. I understand that this wasn't just some, idiot that was, trying to give me a bad time. So I had to help her understand that, we can have physical or body kinds of traumas or assaults or betrayals. We can have emotional kinds of betrayals. But if there is a deeper betrayal, a soul-based betrayal, it's going to hit us deeper. It is going to get us at a level that is much harder to heal. If, again, someone who has uh, experienced infidelity within a relationship, there are times when partners are able to get past it. And it's really, and I tell people, affairs are basically a way to either make or break a relationship because something has to be going wrong within the relationship if there's an affair going on anyway. And it's that whole idea of helping the person understand, okay, what was it within the relationship? What was it that happened? If it is, if they were the kind of the person that was betrayed, then basically they have to look at their own trust issues and can they look at this other person with pure eyes again? And they may or may not ever be able to do that. But it's healing that soul wound within them that is going to help them get beyond it, either to repair themselves for the sake of the marriage or repair themselves so that they can leave the marriage or relationship and go on to have other healthy relationships. What if you've been backstabbed by a sibling? What if there's someone that kind of threw you under the bus? What if, that whole idea of, our family members are those who are supposed to be the closest to us. They're supposed to have our backs. But again, as a psychologist and personally, I know that doesn't always happen the way that you would think it was. Family and blood relationships don't mean anything if both parties aren't willing to kind of meet in the same place. So if there is ever a situation where you have, again, I call it willful harm. We make stupid mistakes all the time. We can say something, we can hurt other people, we can do things that are like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize I was doing that, or wow, I was being, self-centered. Gosh, I'm so sorry. When there is some remorse there, that that person just made a mistake. They didn't realize what they were doing. That is a totally different kind of betrayal than the betrayal that you experience if you know they are doing it intentionally. If you know someone is manipulating, if you know someone is being untruthful, if you know someone is curbing the truth in their direction, meaning to make something better for themselves. If you know that that willful harm is there, that is what breaks the bond. And that is why it is so hard to heal from those things. Now, again, I'm not a typical psychologist. So for me, a lot of times when I have a client who comes in with some sort of betrayal, I have them step back and really look at, okay, what are they supposed to learn from a soul level? What are they supposed to understand about themselves? Because in many cases, it's kind of uncanny, but in many cases, that betrayal doesn't surprise the person because maybe they saw signs way before that they were even married or in a committed relationship, and they kind of overlooked them. So, sometimes you have to step back and teach a person how to trust themselves more so they don't become betrayed again in the future. So gosh, again, I want to talk about this willful harm piece. When there is willful harm, it directly breaks the bond between you and that other soul or other souls if it's a group of people. It is that idea that that is the most difficult wound to heal, if even healable. Sometimes betrayal is the wake-up call we need in order to realize, wow, that person was never really healthy for us. They never had our back. They never really, it was really never about a mutual bond. It was about leaning in the direction of taking care of them, or it was leaning in the direction of, you were placating or you were accommodating them all the time. So oftentimes there's more information embedded behind the betrayal that will help you understand some sort of lesson that you're supposed to learn anyway to take you forward and take you moving in the direction that you need to go. Now, I'm going to go back to another kind of betrayal. What if there was an affair in a relationship and basically the person's having an affair, and yet it's the other person that has been mean to them all the time. So in other words, maybe their partner was the one that was abusive, or whether it's verbally or physically or emotionally or whatever. And then basically this person ends up in an affair. Well, a lot of times it's because they really are looking for some sort of comfort and love. And in those cases, I don't necessarily blame the person who's having the affair. It's basically learning, what can you do to comfort yourself and be in a place where you can get out of that marriage before you go on. But, that creates another sense of betrayal, but sometimes betrayal towards yourself, like not being able to forgive yourself for doing something you shouldn't have done, or that was going to be harmful for you. Betrayal comes in all shapes and sizes, and it can be in all these directions and all these different forms. And yet it's the willfulness behind that betrayal that makes the biggest difference for whether or not someone can forgive and whether someone is forgivable. And, like I said, if you can just scan through your life and think about the types of betrayal that we can have betrayal from parents if they are neglectful, or if they are abusive, or if they are alcoholics, or drug addicts, and they're not paying attention to you, or they're taking the money that you should be able to eat with or have clothes with, and yet they're spending it on alcohol or drugs. Or, if you have a gambler in your family and the person's taking the money and, taking the resources away from you being a healthy individual. So it could be that we feel betrayed by our parents. It could be that we feel betrayed because they didn't take care of themselves and they died early. It could be very different ways of what that willful harm is. And again, we have to tease through what the actual essence of that betrayal is in order to heal it. But I wanted to throw this out here because as part of the Soul of Psychology series, I try to help people understand from a psychological perspective how the soul works and how it is involved in each and every form of our healing and each and every form of how we need to take ourselves further. And the soul is always involved. It's our soul that gets wounded at that deepest level. And when it comes to betrayal, you have to think about the whole concept of willful harm. When it is willful harm, there is a bigger issue in the situation. There's a bigger issue because that other person has some sort of intention that is much more about themselves than it is about that relationship anyway. And so helping a person understand that sometimes betrayal is exactly what a person needs to experience in order to see more wholly what that relationship is like and what it's going to be like, then basically moving beyond it. Now, if someone has betrayed you and yet they show remorse in an honest and an authentic way, people can get past that. An apology can go a long, long way. And, I have clients in, gosh, probably every day of my practice that say, oh, yeah, I've never heard an apology from this person. I've never heard this person, whether it's a mother, a father, a sister, a brother, a partner, a child, never heard them apologize. And part of it is that is another form of betrayal that I try to encourage people to look at is, wow, if that person knows they've done wrong, but they're not willing to admit it for whatever reason, that is like a double betrayal because of the fact that they're doubly hurting you. They did the act, but that they're not able to come back and apologize to you. So, or show that remorse, show that kind of, show up and take responsibility and own their part in the situation. And that is, again, why I think many relationships are difficult, is that if a person can't really own their stuff, you can never have a really clear, energetic connection with them. It gets broken down. It gets dismantled. It gets fragmented. And so, you're always watching over your shoulder to figure out what the heck's going to happen next. And it's not worth the energy to do that. Now, I want to also mention the fact that, there is some guilt that is placed on a lot of people for not getting over their stuff, meaning, why are you still holding on to that? Why are you, I did that years ago. Why are you still paying attention to that? Why are you bringing that up? Well, it's because that person has felt betrayed to the point that maybe you didn't take responsibility those 20 years ago when the affair happened, or when you undermined them in some other way or lied to them or whatever. And so that's why oftentimes people bring stuff up from ages ago, is that the betrayal is still alive in them. The wound is still alive because the other person never showed remorse, never showed that they wanted to own up to the fact that they hurt the person. And so, again, best way to ruin a relationship is to do something willfully against that other person. Best way is to screw up in a way that you're already screwing up, because that person on the other end is going to experience that for the rest of their lives. Again, honest mistakes happen every day. We can step on people's emotional toes left and right and not realize it. But it's when that person comes back and says, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea what I was doing," or "Wow, I'm going to own this," that makes all the difference. Now, I'm also going to equate the betrayal to kind of the court system and what's happening right now well, and has been happening for decades in the courts, that, basically sometimes people don't press charges against other people because they know they will never own up to it. They know that they will be more and more betrayed by the system, because this person can know that they were raped or stolen from or whatever it might be. And if it is not held up in court, then they not only feel betrayed by that person or situation or the company or whatever betrayed them, but they then feel betrayed by the system for not following through and finding the truth and having their back. So it is not unusual at all for people who have been raped or assaulted or whatever the situation, that they don't press charges. And it's because they know deep down that the wound will not heal. They know that they will not get what they need in order to find closure. So when the Me Too movement was happening, and I had more and more of my clients disclosing that things had happened to them that had never disclosed it before, even though we'd worked together for a while, I oftentimes had to work through with them the fact that, part of it is they did the best they could to protect themselves at the time, because the betrayal that happened was not going to be proven in a way now that would help them feel like they could heal or find closure. So we had to heal in other ways. We had to do either self-forgiveness work or self-betrayal kind of work, and see if we could heal it in those ways. So I'm hoping that this helps illuminate why betrayal is such a big one to get past. Last thing I'm going to say is, because I do soul work and because I understand the soul as well as the human psyche, and doing the psychological work that I have for so long, I also know that the biggest betrayal we can create for ourselves is to be untrue to ourselves. So we can betray our souls. We can hurt ourselves at a deep level as well. We can break that bond we have with ourselves. We can diminish our relationship that we have with ourselves if we do or continue to do something that we know is not aligned with who we are. If we dismiss our emotions, if we dismiss a need, if we accommodate someone else when basically we know that we need something other than what that accommodation is, if we lie to ourselves, there's all these different ways that we can betray ourselves, but we have to think about that idea that just like being hurt from someone else, we can actually betray our own souls. And to me, that is the biggest offense, but that is also the biggest thing we need to overcome, is to learn how to honor and align with ourselves so that we can get to that place where we, again, have the best relationship possible that we have with anyone, but that anyone is ourselves. And so this is, again, another reason why I want us to really kind of think about, what does betrayal do? It's all about the willful harm. It's all about, someone not being able to own up to whatever it is that hurt us in the first place, whether it's someone else or ourselves that has hurt us, and how it is that we come full circle to get through that process of healing. We have to go to that soul level. We have to do what, again, whether it's the self-forgiveness work or the betrayal work in general, to get you to that point of feeling whole once again. Would love to hear your questions, would love to hear comments. Again, just trying to bring more information for how all of these psychological kinds of things can impact us as us at a soul level, and go from there. Hope you have a wonderful day, and more coming to you soon.